We are Ole Miss Rebels. As Mississippi's flagship university, we dig deeper, see farther, work harder. We pioneered human organ transplants. We helped prove Einstein's theory of gravitational waves. We are conducting life-changing research that solves the problems of today. We are Ole Miss, transforming lives and the world.
Welcome to the POMcast with Stephen Willis. Now we're going to do things a little different. We are going to provide an honest look at Ole Miss athletics for the fan, by the fan, and of the fan. That is what we do. Hell be to me. I'm just kidding. Tune in for some Ole Miss sports news. We're going to give it to you straight. Yeah, right now. The POMcast starts now. It happens now. Holy cow. Listen to me. It's starting. Well, it's going to start right about now. Good morning, good morning, good morning. Welcome to the POMcast on this beautiful Thursday morning down here from the palatial Central Florida studios. I am your host on this magical mystery tour, Stephen Willis, and we're going to talk a little bit today about some questions around the SEC. I know this is an Ole Miss podcast. We're going to touch on Ole Miss as well, but it's something that we're going to talk about, and if it depends on how it hits, we'll get Corey into doing around the SEC and get another perspective on those questions as we go. But again, I'm Stephen Willis. Before we get started, I do want to tell you about the Vault Society. What is the Vault Society? It's a big push from the Ole Miss Athletics Foundation. It's a 5-year commitment of support, and membership starts at $5,000 a year. There's a benefit chart on the site. I'll give you that address in just a second. But first, I want to tell you that all gifts to Ole Miss between now and June 30th receive triple points. Red points are non-deductible and go towards priority seating. Blue points are 90% tax deductible and go towards parking and non-home ticketed games, postseason bowl games, and neutral site. There's one coming up in about 109 days that fits that criteria. If you have any questions, go to givetoathletics.com. Go to givetoathletics.com. If you're watching the podcast, thank you very much. But if you're listening and if you want to watch it some other way, this is where you can catch us. We're on Twitter at The Stephen Willis and at The Rebel Walk. We are on Facebook at facebook.com/POMcast and The Rebel Walk. We're on YouTube at Positively Ole Miss. Hit the bell for notifications of when, not just when we're streaming, but what we're streaming, and subscribe. We're also on Willis Digital Media. That is stuff outside of our Ole Miss purview, and we're going to expand that in the future. We're also on Twitch at Positively Ole Miss, all one word, and Willis Digital Media, all one word. Also, if you like audio, you like that version of the podcast, which we are probably going to break a monthly record a week early this weekend. So thank you very much for that. You can catch us at Google Podcast, Apple Podcast, SoundCloud, Stitcher, Spotify, iHeartRadio, TuneIn Radio, and Pandora. We're also on smaller podcatchers, but it would take all day to list them. Thank you very much for tuning in. Okay. Now that we do that, we're going to talk a little bit about questions around the SEC. And I'm just going to kind of spitball what comes to mind right off the bat. And the number one question that I have, we're going to start with Ole Miss, is how big of an improvement can the defense make? That is the key to this season. How big of an improvement can the defense make? Last season, I think, is a mirage to an extent, because there was no spring practice. Fall practice was wonky, and you were rushing in with a new staff, new scheme, new everything, and you had 15 or 16 practices to get it right. Of course, the front of the season was going to look like it did. It was a disaster against Florida. It was a disaster against Kentucky, and it was a disaster against Alabama. Now, 2 of those you can understand there's being a disaster, but the disaster against Kentucky, that was a problem, and let us know that it was an actual problem. And as the season went on and the film caught up, there were little tweaks and changes made to that defense, and there was improvement throughout the season, as you would expect to happen. Tylen Knight earned a spot basically playing the star last year. The defensive line was a weak point. The linebackers was a weak point. But the outside guys, the Sam Williams, got better as the season went on. And the star got better that handled the edge on that running attack. In the beginning of the season, it was hitting that edge, and it was like we couldn't get there. Well, then it started to close down a little bit. And against Indiana, they played quite well. I don't think anybody would be upset with the way they played against Indiana. They ran out of gas towards the end, but they made a stop when they had to make it. But after a full spring, after a roster makeover, after a full fall camp, what is the product we're going to see on the field? That's what matters. I mean, we have upgraded at defensive line. We signed 2 players, JUCOs, that are in the top 1 and top 2, whatever, defensive linemen in the country. We signed a grad transfer that's going to come in and play linebacker. Our secondary is athletes everywhere, and I told you, and I've been telling you for months, I am so high on Tysheem Johnson. And he could have had several picks in the spring game, and he's just a super athlete with a nose for the football. The ball finds him, and that is actually a good place to be if you're a DB. Let's see. But you have athletes. You have corners with length coming in that's going to press the starters, which should be, Keydron Smith and Dean Leonard. And you have length behind them. And then you have, what's his name? A.J. Finley. I'm sorry about that. Just slipped my mind for a second. Playing back at free safety, and I think you moved Keydron Smith back to free safety. That happened this spring. That was another brain goof for me. But you have athletes that are patrolling it, and you have Otis Reese, and you have Jacob Springer is going to be eligible this year. So you have pieces in the back line. So this is going to be a back forward defense. So what I mean by that is the defense is going to be solid in the back end. Now, I'm not saying that it's going to give up like it used to 170 yards passing. That doesn't exist anymore. That's not a thing anymore. In the age of the spread offenses, you can throw the ball against anybody, but you have the athletes to prevent big plays, and you can bend but don't break type defense. And this defense is really set up for explosive plays. It just really is. It's set up for explosive plays, lost yard plays, turnovers, anything that can steal a possession for the offense. That's the way this is built. Now, there's going to be people that just do not like that mindset. Just absolutely do not like that mindset. And I understand that. I get that. But in modern college football, that's the way we're going to play. So if we are 80th, 75th, 70th in the country, but we have a high turnover rate, the defense will be successful because of this offense. I have next to no questions about the offense, except who is going to replace Elijah Moore. And I suspect by the end of the year, maybe not the beginning of the year, it's going to be J.J. Henry. I expect Jacour Pearson to play that role early on, and maybe Quay Davis getting some snaps in there. But we have fall camp to sort that out. That's going to get sorted. But the defensive side of the ball is going to be a back-forward defense. We need to look at the linebacker play after this. Now, remember, this is a 4-3-3-4 hybrid with Sam Williams and the star dictating exactly what's going on with the defense. Understand that. It's actually technically a 3-3-5 or a 4-2-5, but it's a 4-3-3-4, that type principle. And there's going to be massive blitzing. And the key to that is going to be the defensive line. That is the key to DJ Durkin's defense. Along with those 2 edge guys, the defensive line has to do their job. And with Jamon Gordon and Isaiah Iton, there's a chance that that's going to happen. And don't forget about Tywan Malone coming in as well. We haven't laid eyes on him yet. He was not an early enrollee, but he's going to come in as well. And I expect him to flash Talik Rollins as well. I think he's going to flash a little bit as well. A&M was in on him until signing day, and we won that battle. So it's going to be interesting with that defense. Now, I'm normally an offensive guy, and that's the way that I watch all manner of film. Offensive guy, spread offense guy. I mean, that's really what I do. But defensively, I am just so intrigued by this team. And there's so many steps that can be made towards national prominence by this defense this year. And I know that sounds like hyperbole and everything going on, but it's absolutely the truth. Sometimes it is the truth. You have an offense that is the best 3 or 4 offenses in the country, even without Elijah Moore. I think without Elijah Moore, especially at the beginning of the year, the offense is going to be harder to defend because they're going to have to figure out who they're going to put the primary on. Now, Ole Miss needs to find a tight end. Hudson Wolf or anybody in the grad transfer market or whatever they do, they probably need to get that because this offense runs through the slot and through the tight end, and the outside guys are double move guys and blockers. But it's going to be interesting to watch this team. That is the single question with Ole Miss football this season. Now, going around the rest of the teams in the league, I want to talk about Alabama. There's a big question with Alabama. Now, we're not saying there's not talented players replacing them, but they are unproven. Last season, Bryce Young, all the hype that's built on Bryce Young, whenever the game got out of control and Alabama was going to easily win, Mac Jones was still in the game. When other quarterbacks, might have played midway through the third quarter on, Bryce Young didn't get in. Why? Najee Harris graduating, that's going to be a big loss. I like Brian Robinson. I mean, I really enjoy Brian Robinson as a player, but he's not Najee Harris. If he was Najee Harris, he would have just been starting over him. And then Jalen Waddle and I think Smith graduated. Everybody knows they're going to recruit good players. There's going to be good players there. That's not what I'm saying, but it's going to be unproven players. And they're led by the guy that traded DeAndre Hopkins for a running back. That concerns me there, just thinking about it out loud. If somebody's willing to do that, can you really trust them as a football guy? I mean, just period. I understand Nick Saban's there. I understand all that's going on. But there are some legit questions, and they are still going to be the favorite for the West. I'm not saying they're not. But there are some questions at the skill positions in Alabama. It could be a disaster. What happens if Bryce Young goes out there and Jeremy Johnson's? I know your answer will be, they'll put the next 5-star in. Well, if the next 5-star was going to be able to play, he would already be there. He didn't. The other guy, Jeremy Johnson or Bryce Young, won the competition through fall camp. So then it becomes a crapshoot. It becomes a varsity blues situation. Is the other guy that good? It'll be interesting to see that. I'm interested to see Auburn with Brian Harsin coming in, taking over Gus Malzahn's system. Is that going to be like a Paul Johnson transformation, or is that going to be a typical spread offense bounce from one to the other? Because Brian Harsin runs more of a pro-style spread system. I would call it pro-spread. And let's say Gus didn't. He just ate up quarterbacks. He wanted to be a passing coach, and he wanted to be a passing offense, but he could never replicate what he had with Cam Newton and Nick Marshall. Period. So that's a question to see how his personnel can translate to Brian Harsin. Georgia, will Kirby Smart take his hands off the offense? Turn JT loose. Let this be an offensive team with the number of weapons they have. They out-talent this season 11 teams on their schedule, 12 teams on their schedule. I don't think they play Alabama this year. That's the reason I bring that up. But if they don't play Alabama, they out-talent everybody on their schedule. Turn the offense loose and score the points. Your defense is going to out-talent the offense in front of you. Just play. You can account for play volume. Just realize instead of 10 points a game given up, you're going to give up 20 points a game. Just go score 24. It's not that hard. Florida, how will they use Emory Jones? This is fascinating. After an offense as dynamic as it was last year, and just everything, there is a temptation to fall in the trap that David Cutcliffe did in 2004, and that was let Michael Spurlock run Eli Manning's system. But now that Kyle Trask is gone, what do you turn it over to? Now, what I would do is run basically the same offense that they ran when Chris Relf was at Mississippi State. And expand that depending on what the level of the kid can handle. Whenever they came out last year and threw the ball around, he struggled mightily. Just absolutely struggled mightily. And that became a huge problem for Dan Mullen. And they got rolled pretty good in the bowl game. And there's no Kyle Pitts. There's no Kadarius Toney. There's no special players that can unlock defenses. I mean, the outside guys are great. Everybody wants an outside guy, but it's become a luxury piece in college football. The ones you need are the slot player and the tight end. That's what Lane Kiffin does. That's what Florida was good doing last year. To be honest, that's what Alabama was really good at as well. Nobody talks about Miller Forrestall, but he's a heck of a tight end. Put Jalen Waddle beside him or Mechie beside him, all of a sudden it becomes a problem. Especially whenever you can use motion and shifts to affect the defense like they did. If you have a chance, go back and watch Ole Miss's third touchdown against Vanderbilt last year. It's on our YouTube page. You can go down there and see it on demand. The third touchdown, they shifted. Inside the hash, there was one player on Elijah Moore outside the numbers. There was no defender within 20 or 25 yards of Elijah Moore and that defender. It was a complete island. It was completely done by motions and shifts. It was unbelievable coaching, and it ended up being a touchdown for Ole Miss, as it should be, because nobody really can cover at the college level Elijah Moore one-on-one. Anyway, it's 11:17. We're going to take a short break. When we come back, we are going to go on about the questions and other ones that we might have. And there's a couple of them that we have that would be interesting to see. But stick around. We're going to take a short break.
Only 10% of us get enough daily exercise.
And that number is dropping.
Nearly 30% of us are overweight or obese.
We spend 6 hours a day in front of a screen.
As a result, we now have a shorter life expectancy than our parents.
But give us the right start in sports, and we'll never stop.
Learn how at active4life.ca.
Hey, this is Stephen Willis from Positively Ole Miss. We're almost done with this break. We'll be back with good information quite soon.
The military has been in every generation of my family, and so has VA. It wasn't easy for my dad after Vietnam, but VA helped him and my mom get the home they'd always wanted. My grandpa's been coming to VA since World War II. They even helped him lay to rest one of his battle buddies from Normandy. And me, I followed in their footsteps and served with pride. And now that I'm out of the military, the GI Bill's helping me with school. Every generation of my family has served, and VA has served us all.
All right, welcome back to the POMcast. I'm your host on this magical mystery tour, Stephen Willis. I want to tell you a little bit about the rebelwalk.com. Evelyn and the team do a fantastic job. I mean, there's experts for everything. Any sports you want to follow, there's an expert that can cover it adequately and do it and give you what you want. They provide a subscriber level experience for no money. The only investment's your time, and it's well worth it. You'll be a fool to not check them out. That is the rebelwalk.com. That is the rebelwalk.com. We are talking about questions that we have around the SEC and what's kind of important and how does it look going forward. And the next one we want to talk about is, how will Mississippi do against the drop 8? This has followed Mike Leach for 4 or 5 years. And it really, when the talent is equal or better, the drop 8 is kryptonite to the air raid system. When the talent is demonstrably better. If it's even, you can get around it a little bit. But that's the reason in the Pac-12 he would go equal talent with teams like Arizona, teams like UCLA when they were down, teams like Stanford and all that is great. But then they would get to Washington, and Washington had clearly better players on the defensive side of the ball than Washington State. And they would do the drop 8 and it would work because they were a step quicker. They could read the game a step faster. They could do the things that you would expect a high quality athlete be able to do. And it's the simplest game plan known to man. Three players rushing. Sometimes you can get pressure. If you can get him off his spot with the drop 8, you're probably going to force a turnover. But that is the kryptonite, and that is what honestly they was shown by Arkansas last year. They set up the blueprint against all these teams. Of course, they started tweaking as the season went on. By the Ole Miss game, it wasn't necessarily drop 8, but it was a drop 8 look every time. It turned into a zone coverage or zone blitz type thing where a defensive lineman is going back, you're rushing a linebacker, but it was a little bit different look. And that is the question that is going to face Will Rogers next year. He's a heck of a quarterback. And Wally's a heck of a receiver. They've got a baseline to be really good, but they have to figure out that drop 8. And the way that you can beat a drop 8 is run the football. I mean, that's absolutely the way to beat a drop 8 is just be reliant on the run until they come out of it. Until they have to put a safety forward to handle the run game, and then you can hit them with the pass game. That's the way this works. The only reason the drop 8 should beat you is if you are being stubborn. That's just the fact of the matter. The problem is, though, their playbook is so small and there's so few running plays. And they do basically some inside zone and maybe a little duo stuff. But it's so nitpicky with 3 or 4 plays that's kind of easy to diagnose for the defense. So just a heads up there, that's that major question with Mississippi State. The FPI put them in the top 10 next year, but they won't be anywhere near the top 10 unless they can figure out an answer to that question. They have to go to Fayetteville next year. That's going to be a look at the drop 8, period. If you can run the ball, you can win the game. If you cannot run the ball and you force the ball, you throw interceptions and you lose the game. See Ole Miss and State last year against Arkansas. The difference is Matt Corral is learning to play against a drop 8, and teams are learning to coach against a drop 8. You will see a lot of Ole Miss running the ball. And I'm looking forward, by the way, just one of my favorite plays in the Lane Kiffin arsenal is the triple option. And you're like, whoa. I don't see anything else like that. No, you don't. Because it is fantastic. First option is the jet sweep. Second option is the running back. Third option is the zone read around the other end. It avoids pretty much the middle of the line. And it really puts the linebackers in conflict. And eventually we're going to see that. Right now we're not seeing it just because we're so pronounced with what we're doing, but it is a next step. It is a timing thing as well. You need an excellent jet sweep guy. And honestly, with Elijah Moore, you didn't want to use him that way because he was so valuable down the field playing one-on-one. LSU is looking for a quarterback. TJ Finley's already transferred. Everybody thinks Max Johnson is ready to take the step, but he's battling Miles Brennan, who has popped up on top 10 quarterback lists. They changed their coordinators last year, so they're trying to go back and find Joe Brady like magic. I don't see it. I mean, if it doesn't work, what I'm seeing is down there a lot of what I saw firsthand right up close in Oxford. I mean, something happens like, well, that looks familiar. And eventually we're going to hit the point where he regresses. He's a heck of a recruiter. Nobody doubts that. But other than one season with Joe Brady and Dave Aranda, what's he really done? Something to think about. And, there's also the questions down there about the NCAA and what's going on about stealing from children's cancer charity to buy football players and things. But that's not necessarily the question. That's not what I'm talking about right now. I'm just talking about the quarterback position and how they mesh with the coaches and what is that going to do. And the question is, is the same thing happening at LSU that happened at Ole Miss? And my answer right now is I don't know, but it looks like it. Kentucky changing to the Sean McVay style offense. I'm kind of curious about that. I don't know if they'll be under center. I don't know what's going on up there. How is the transition going to happen from Eddie Gran to the new offensive coordinator? There was a team so heavy and reliant with running the ball, and they were so big on formations. I am curious to see what that looks like. I know last year they had a good freshman that they were pretty hyped up about, and if they're willing to change their system because of this guy, granted, that's a smart move. That's what you need to do. But this isn't necessarily Terry Wilson walking through the door. So Kentucky, interesting. I want to see what they do, though. Arkansas, I want to see KJ Jefferson a quarterback. I want to see what he does. They do a lot of the same stuff that we do. And what does year 2 look like under Kendall Briles up there? I mean, it's going to be quite interesting. And if they do quite well, one or both of the coordinators is their last year in Fayetteville. That's interesting. But we'll see. I'm going to give you a couple minutes back. There's several more questions. I'm just going to have to get Corey on here and do it around the SEC to where we talk about it and get a little bit more in depth and can go a little longer. So look for one of those probably either sometime this weekend or Monday or tomorrow. Who knows? But I'm Stephen Willis. Thank you very much for watching, and we will see you tomorrow. Hotty toddy.